Good morning, everybody. How's it going? How was your weekend? Did you have a great weekend with a full-on Netflix binge? And now it's Monday and you said you didn't have time. So today's beach walk blog is all about time, priorities, and making excuses, or should I say, not making excuses. Now, for some of you, I know this is going to be super triggering because you're going to make excuses and you're going to take this that somebody's nagging you. Oh, I don't have time. That's okay. That's okay. You're not ready yet. And that's okay. I'm okay with it. Are you okay with it? It's your life, right? You're the one who makes the decisions about your life. You choose what you do and you choose what excuses you make. And that's okay, because it's your choice. Now, this weekend, I made a couple of interesting situations with my body. I found some interesting things that I hadn't found before, or maybe I had found them before, but I'd kind of forgotten about them. And then when I found them again, I was like, oh yeah, I remember you. And I'd kind of got sidetracked with other things. That's okay. I got sidetracked with other things, but I brought myself back to the things that I needed more of. And I made time to do that. I did a Netflix binge this weekend as well. The Umbrella Academy is very, very good. Just a recommendation for you there. If you like Stranger Things, The Umbrella Academy is really good. Anyway, while I was Netflix binging, I was also doing my MFR. And that's what you can do with MFR. You can do it anywhere, anytime, even when you're doing a Netflix binge. But you still have to make the choice to do it. You're not just laying there doing nothing, you're actually laying there doing something. And that's the difference. You still have to make a choice to do it. And again, if you decide to do it or you don't decide to do it, that's up to you. That's your choice. And that time, you can never get back. Alright? Think about it. That time you can never get back. And you can say you're overwhelmed, you can say you're not getting any results. But is that the reason why you're not getting results? Because you're not prioritizing your time and you're not putting that time, because remember, you can't get time back. It's gone. Once it's gone, it's gone. You can't get that time back, and you're prioritizing other things. Now, we all have to rest and recover, but we can still do MFR. You can still do that MFR and you can still get lots of benefit from that time. But that's your choice. Now, I wanted to also talk about training and why are you not getting results with your training? A post I did the other day, the difference between exercise and training is the difference between one person getting results and another person not getting results. And I see this a lot. I see this so much when I look at different running groups where there's especially beginners, but this doesn't just apply to beginners, this applies to everybody and anybody. Maybe not to everybody, because a lot of people are getting great results and this doesn't apply to you. But if you're not getting the results that you want, the first thing you have to think about is, am I doing the right thing to get the right result? I.e., this is the difference between exercising and training. I can, like right now, I'm walking along the beach, looking at these amazing houses. God, it's great. I need to earn at least 20 million a year to buy these houses. Am I doing the right things to earn $20 million a year? No. Do I want to earn $20 million a year? Maybe. Do I want to have the stress that goes with that? Definitely not. All right, so are you doing the right things to get the right results? Now, what I mean by that is, and this kind of ties in with another post that I did a couple of days ago as well, which is doing the right thing to get the right result. Well, if you're injured, and every runner that I've ever known does this, Oh, I'm injured, right, let's jump on the bike because I need to maintain my fitness. Well, sure, that's great. You're maintaining your cardiovascular fitness. That's fantastic. Health and fitness is important. Of course it is. Maintaining fitness is also important. But maintaining specific fitness is even more important. Now, you might not be able to maintain your specific level of fitness if you're a runner by walking. But what you can do is you can go for walks. Now, somebody also commented and said, well, if you can't walk because the pain is there, then you can't walk, so then you have to cycle. Well, you don't have to cycle. You could swim, or you could do aqua jogging, aqua running, right? You don't have to automatically just jump on the nearest bike just because you're injured as a runner. There's so many other options. And these are options that will also help your gait cycle movement. Because we know, yes, maintaining fitness, cardiovascular fitness is important. Your heart is getting worked, your pulmonary system, your blood vessels and all that is all getting worked, and your lungs are doing their job, etc., etc. It's all getting worked. Whether you're on a bike or you're on an elliptical, or whether you're on and there's another option, the elliptical, whether you're on any of those things, whether you're on a rowing machine, whether you're swimming, your heart and your lungs and your pulmonary system is all getting worked. But it's not specific because you're not loading the tissues in the same way as you do when you run and when you walk. So there is an element of specificity there. So why not be a little bit more specific with your movement fitness? Now I'm going to coin a new term here, movement fitness. Are you fit to move the way you want to move? And I'm going to say no, you're not, because you're injured. So therefore you weren't fit enough to do what you wanted to do in the volume you wanted to do it, with the demand and the load that you wanted to do. Movement fitness. Woo, new term. Love it. So if you are, let's say you're a Tour de France rider and you've got a VO2 max of 80. It's pretty high. Does that mean that automatically you're going to be as good a runner as somebody else who's got a VO2 max of 80 who's a runner? No. And vice versa. Is the runner going to have the same ability as a cyclist with the same VO2 max? No, is the answer to that. No. Because there's specificity involved. There's specificity of movement, of load, of tissue capacity. All right? You might have an incredible heart and lungs, but you don't have the specific tissue and movement capacity to be a runner, or to be a cyclist if you are a runner. Right, so if you're injured, I would say to you, don't just jump on the bike, because we know that the position of cycling and the loading of cycling is not akin to running. It's not even akin to walking. Right, think about it. You're just basically sitting on a bike, flexed over your handlebars. You don't even have to support your body weight. How can that be the same? How can that be even closely related to running? There's no hip extension, there's no internal rotation, there's no torso movement, hardly. Right? It's nothing like it. The position of your body is completely different. So therefore, how can it be the same? Right? Think about it. Okay, so if you are an injured runner, don't jump on the bike and go, I must maintain my fitness, because again, something I see all over social media groups is, well, I can barely walk without my heart rate going above 120. Right? So go and walk. Get your body moving. Right? Do some of the sling method exercises, the basic 8. That's all about movement in gait. These are all movement specific things that you can do to maintain your movement specific fitness. Right? It's not 100% the same, but it's really close. And it's going to be better than getting on a bike. Okay, so if you are injured, don't just dive for the nearest bike to say, I must maintain my fitness. No, find something else, do something else. All right, join a gym for the next 30 days. Go and pay a gym membership for the next 30 days and get on an elliptical. It's going to be better than getting on a bike. Go and get an aqua jogging belt, an aqua running belt. Go and run in the pool. All right, get a hold of the sling method. Get a copy of the basic 8 and the intermediate 10 and the rotational torque training. All right, and put these things into play for the future. It's a little insurance policy, an actionable insurance policy. All right. So, why aren't you getting results? Right. So we talked about exercise versus training, and if I'm doing lots and lots of high intensity interval training because hard is better, it isn't. Hard is not better. It's hard. I can't go hard for as long as I can go easy, or easier, should I say. All right. So if you are just getting up and doing lots of high intensity interval training, thinking that because it's harder, it's going to make you faster, doesn't work that way. It will make you faster, or it will make you more able to bear the load of those high intensity intervals, i.e. you will get better at doing that. You'll get better at doing high intensity interval training. Of course you will, because that's what you're doing. But that is not going to make you better at the movement of running. It's not going to load your soft tissues and your joints and your bones. It's not going to load all of these tissue structures in the way that they need to be loaded in order to adapt to the forces that they need to adapt to, right? So, because we know that the body adapts to the forces, the specific forces and stresses that we place upon it in a specific way. That's the rule of specificity. That's the SAID principle, specific adaptation to the imposed demand, right? The SAID principle. So if you want to adapt to a specific something, you must do that specific something, all right? It's right there. Specific adaptation to the imposed demand. If you're not creating that demand, then you're not going to get the demand that you need to adapt to, so therefore you're not going to adapt, right? You're not going to get the adaptation that you want, so therefore you're going to adapt to something else. And that something else might not be, in fact it won't be, the demand and the load that you're wanting to adapt to, right? It's kind of obvious. So you must create the right demand so that you can adapt to those demands to then specifically adapt and create the right training, right? So if you're trying to be a runner, then you need to adapt to the forces of running. So getting on a bike is not training the tissues in the correct way. It's not training any of those tissues in the correct way. Why? Because it's not running, right? Every time I land, every time my foot hits the ground, there's somewhere between 3 and 8 times my body weight and the force that's going through some of my tissues. Between 3 and 8 times my body weight. How am I going to adapt to that force if I'm not producing that force? Now, I've said this so many times in the past that when you land in running, you're landing on one foot and it's really quick, and you are landing out in front of your center of mass and then taking off. Your foot takes off behind your center of mass, and that specific movement where I land in front, I pull my leg back, or I thrust my torso over the top and my other leg comes forwards, and then I take off. That movement happens in approximately 1/5 to 1/4 of a second, right? So in 1/5 of a second to 1/4 of a second, 0.2 to 0.25 of a second, I've landed, I've loaded, and then I've taken off. And there's a lot of other things that happen in that same amount of time as well. Now, if I'm not practicing to land, load, and then throw myself over the top of that stance leg, if I'm not practicing that in any way, how am I going to adapt to those demands? What am I going to do? I'm going to wait until I can run again to then make the same mistake that I made before, which is to do too much of the wrong thing and not enough of the right thing, and expect that I'm going to get a different result. Expect that I'm going to magically this time I'm just going to train myself, or should I say magically this time I'm going to adapt to a force that doesn't occur. Yeah, that doesn't sound too right, does it? Because I can't adapt to something that's never occurring. Right? It's like, why have I never learnt French? Because I've never exposed myself to learning French. Right? I have to expose myself to the demands of learning French in order to learn French, or Swedish, or Italian, whatever. You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. You absolutely know what I'm saying. I can't adapt to something that doesn't occur. Right? So I have to make that occur so that I can adapt to it. And all the high intensity training in the world is not going to make you adapt to a force that never occurs, or a movement that never occurs. In the same way that I'm never going to learn French until I start learning French. Right? It's kind of crazy, isn't it? We're all, so many runners are expecting that they're going to get better at running without running, or they're going to get fitter for running without doing more running, or they're going to get better at doing long distance running by doing short distance running, or by doing high intensity interval training that doesn't involve running. Okay, sure, that's not how it works, right? And in the same way, the winner of the Tour de France next week is not going to all of a sudden magically become the best marathon runner in the world without then adapting their body, by training their body, by exposing their body to the forces it needs to adapt to. Right? Again, great heart and lungs, amazing VO2 max, amazing aerobic fitness, conditioned for a different sport, because their body in movement is conditioned for a different movement millions of times, or hundreds of thousands of times. How many pedal strokes is that in a 100-mile bike ride? It's quite a lot. 5 hours, 80 times a minute, 85 times a minute. Whew, that's a lot, right? Anyway, so you get what I'm saying. And the same thing applies to running. Yeah, 26.2 miles, 180 times, 185 times, 190 times a minute, 190 landings per minute, with between 3 and 8 times your body weight on certain structures. Yeah, if you haven't exposed those structures to that kind of graduated loading, they're not going to be able to adapt to what you want them to adapt to, right? All makes sense, doesn't it? So how are you going to create the forces? That's where the sling method comes in, because that's what we do. We create the forces so that you can adapt to them. We work on intramuscular coordination so that your body is creating the movement against the forces that you need to move against and you need to adapt to, right? And here's the kicker, and here's where I see a lot of people making the mistakes here. When we're making changes, we must decrease our mileage, we must decrease our load, our overall load, okay? Because these forces, when we make these changes, these forces then start to happen, right? If I get you to work on your pronation and you are now exposing new tissues to new forces, they need time to adapt and to catch up with what the rest of your body is able to do. And that's why the Tour de France rider is not going to become an instant marathon running success, because they need to expose themselves to the forces that they need to encounter thousands of times each time they run over weeks and months and years, right? And that tissue capacity is what allows us to then overload and recover without getting injured. So if you start making changes and you start exposing new tissues to new forces, which is what you're doing, you must decrease your volume to allow those new tissues, which have never been exposed to these forces before, to recover and adapt, to be able to tolerate new forces. Okay? And that's what I see new runners making the mistake of all the time. I want to be a runner. I want to run a marathon, or I want to run a half marathon. And they start exposing their bodies to forces that they've never exposed themselves to. In fact, go think about it from somebody who's been sitting in a chair for 40 hours a week or more, probably like 80 hours a week when you add in the Netflix movie binges at the weekend. You're going from sitting in a chair for 40 hours or 80 hours to then expecting that you're going to be able to run and not get hurt when every time you land, you're putting on the brakes and you're landing with a forward travelling leg. And you're also probably maybe a little bit overweight and trying to run to lose weight, right? So then you start thinking, right, I've got to get on this half marathon training plan. Right, I've got to be able to run 11 miles to be able to run my half marathon, and I've got to do that in 8 weeks or 12 weeks. Yeah. And you wonder why 67% of runners are injured every year? It's not looking good, is it? It's not looking like it's setting you up for long-term success, right? And that's what we want, is long-term success. So you're getting started with this marathon, half marathon training plan, or 10k training plan. Start off with a 5k training plan and do it over a longer period of time to allow the tissues to adapt. And the first thing you want to be doing is thinking, how do I run? How am I going to do this? And then figuring out that, well, I really don't know how to move. I don't know how to move well. I need to teach myself how to move well so that I don't expose my tissues to undue loads and expectations that they just can't tolerate, aka injury, right? So when you are taking on a new training load and trying to make changes, decrease your volume. Always got to decrease your volume a little bit. Just back off a little bit, all right? I know you'll think you're superhuman, but our bodies, they're the same. They're all the same. Capacity for load. It's the same with all of us. We're not different. And people say that, oh, we're all different. Everybody's different. No, we're not. We're all the same. We're all the same. We've got however many millions of runners out there that are having the same injuries. We've all got the same injuries. Everybody's got plantar fasciitis, lateral knee pain, Achilles tendonitis, high hamstring tendinopathy. Right? You're all shopping from the same injury list. That's a very fabulous quote from a friend of mine. You're all shopping from the same injury list. Right? So if we're all shopping from the same injury list, how are we all so different? No, you're not. And I see that every time I do a gait analysis for somebody. I see the same movement patterns. We're not different, we're all the same. Well, some of us are different because we move differently. But injured runners generally move in very similar ways. Very, very similar ways. And that's the reason why you've all got the same injuries. Right? Why is it that we never hear of runners with upper body injuries? Have a think about that one. Why do runners not have upper body injuries? Well, I'll tell you some of the reasons why. Because you're overworking your legs and you're underworking your upper body in the movement of gait. So here's somebody running towards me. Let's check out her rotation. Fabulous. She's got a great, nice torso rotation there. Good stuff. All right, so you can see how your upper body must rotate. Now, that movement is super important. That movement of rotation in the torso is super important, because from torso rotation we get pelvic rotation and we get pelvic displacement. We get lift in our pelvis, and that lift in our pelvis creates a longer stride. And don't get me started on stride length, because for the life of me I can't figure out why everyone's trying to shorten a dysfunctional stride. Oh, that's a good post there. Shortening a dysfunctional stride doesn't make it functional. Ooh, what a great post that's going to be. So if your pelvis doesn't move very well because your torso doesn't move very well, trying to get stronger arbitrarily ain't going to fix your already dysfunctional movement. Strength does not fix movement. In fact, what it does is it ingrains it. Arbitrary strength ingrains dysfunction. It always has and it always will. Okay? So that torso rotation is super important. Got to get that torso rotation, because the torso drives the pelvis, which drives the legs. And if your torso isn't driving the pelvis, and the pelvis therefore isn't driving the legs, then the legs are overworking. Thus, overuse injuries. And we do not fix overuse injuries by making it work even harder. Right? You got something that's overworking, don't give it more work to do. Make all the rest of the body do more to help it out. Right? If you've got 3 workmen digging up a road, or work people digging up a road, and they can't get it done because they're all overworking, and at the end of the day, at the end of their 12-hour shift, the 4-person comes over and says, "Hey, you got 4 more hours to do. Get back to work." And they're dying. They're like, "I can't do 4 more hours. Oh, I've got shoulder injuries. Oh, my arms are killing me, and my back's killing me." Well, making them work more is not going to make them any less tired. In fact, it's going to make them even more tired and even more overworked. Same thing applies with your body. If your body is overworking, making it stronger, i.e. giving it more work to do, isn't going to make it work less. In fact, it's going to do the complete opposite. Alright? Okay, we're coming up for 30 minutes. I've rambled on about a few things there. But the takeaway here I want you to think of is being specific with your movement and with your training in every way. Why wouldn't you? Running only became a sport when we started to introduce races. Running is just a function of a human body. It's a movement of the human body, a priority movement, an absolute priority movement. Right? It should be able to do it without any problem. And here's the thing, in children, it does. It does. It absolutely does. You don't teach a child to run; they just run. Right? They become a toddler, then they become a runner. They immediately, well, not immediately, but very quickly, they become a runner. That's just how it goes. They're running. You know, humans are runners as a movement priority. Right? Okay, so that function of running is a functional movement. It's the absolute priority. Okay, so that's what we've got to do. We've got to train our bodies to move the way that they used to move before we, as human adults, made ourselves completely and utterly dysfunctional, and before we became Netflix bingers to add to our already dysfunctional lives. Right? And that is what you need to do. You need to get specific about your movement, specific about your training, to get the results that you want to get from that training. Arbitrary training creates arbitrary results, not specific results. Okay? Have a great day. Talk to you soon in the next beach walk vlog, whenever that will be. Take care. Bye.